In the lawless era of the Wild West, a select few individuals rose above the rest, becoming legendary figures of unparalleled skill and deadly precision. They were the Gunslingers, and today we dive into the history of those who earned the title of the deadliest gunslingers of the Wild West. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Now let's get into our choice of the 5 deadliest gunslinger. Orrin Porter, Rockwell. Orrin Porter, Rockwell, June 28, 1813, or June 25, 1815, June 9, 1878 was a figure of the Wild West period of American history. A lawman in the Utah Territory, he was nicknamed Old Port, the destroying angel of Mormondom and modern-day Samson. Rockwell was born in Belchertown, Hampshire County, Massachusetts, to Orrin and Sarah Rockwell, who were neighbors of the Smith family. Rockwell served as a bodyguard and was a personal friend of Latter-day Saint movement founder, Joseph Smith. After Smith's death in 1844, Rockwell became a bodyguard of his successor, Brigham Young, and traveled with him and members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to the Salt Lake Valley in the present-day state of Utah. Following Smith to New York, the Rockwell family would become some of the earliest members of the Latter-day Saint movement, with Porter being baptized in the church on the day it was founded in April 1830. At 16, he was the youngest member. After the New York branch of the church relocated to Ohio, Porter was sent on to Jackson County, Missouri, the intended central gathering place for church members. It was in Missouri that Porter would become proficient with a gun and would marry his first wife in 1832. In Missouri, Porter would also be a suspect in the assignation attempt against former Governor Lilburn Boggs. On the evening of May 6, 1842, Lilburn Boggs was shot by an unknown party who fired at him through a window as he read a newspaper in his study. He was badly wounded but survived. Boggs was the governor of Missouri who had signed the Executive Order 44 on October 27, 1838, known as the Extermination Order, evicting Mormons from Missouri by violent and deadly means. John C. Bennett, a recently excommunicated Mormon who, prior to the assassination, had served as mayor of Nauvoo, Major General of the Nauvoo Legion, and Chancellor of the University of Nauvoo. Bennett implicated Rockwell in the assassination attempt, writing, "In 1841, Joe Smith predicted or prophesied in a public congregation in Nauvoo that Lilburn W. Boggs, ex-governor of Missouri, should die by violent hands within 1 year. From 1 or 2 months prior to the attempted assassination of Governor Boggs, Mr. O.P. Rockwell left Nauvoo for parts unknown to the citizens at large. I was then on terms of close intimacy with Joe Smith and asked him where Rockwell had gone. 'Gone,' said he, 'gone to fulfill prophecy.' Rockwell returned to Nauvoo the day before the report of the assassination reached there. Following the assassination of Joseph Smith in June of 1844, Porter is alleged to have shot and killed Frank Worrell, leader of the group of men responsible for Smith's death, in September of 1845. Porter followed Brigham Young to Utah, and in 1849 was appointed Deputy Marshal of Great Salt Lake City. Rockwell killed many men as a gunfighter, a religious enforcer, and Deputy United States Marshal. According to legend, Rockwell told a crowd listening to United States Vice President Schuyler Colfax in 1869, "I never killed anyone who didn't need killing," a quote used by actor John Wayne in a movie decades later. Rockwell died of natural causes on June 9, 1878, and is buried in the Salt Lake City Cemetery. At his funeral, future church leader Joseph F. Smith said, "They say he was a murderer. If he was the friend of Joseph Smith and Brigham Young, and he was faithful to them and to his covenants, and he has gone to heaven and apostates can go to hell." Thomas Horn Jr., born November 21, 1860, was an American scout, cowboy, soldier, range detective, and Pinkerton agent in the 19th century and early 20th century American Old West. Thomas Horn Jr., known as Tom, was born in 1860 to Thomas S. Horn Sr. and Mary Ann Maricha on their family farm in rural northeastern Scotland County, Missouri. The family owned 600 acres bisected by the South Wyaconda River between the towns of Granger and Etna. Tom was the 5th of 12 children. During his childhood, he suffered physical abuse from his father, and his only companion as a child was a dog named Shedrick. The young Tom later got into a fight with two boys, who beat him and killed the dog with a shotgun. At 16, Horn headed to the American Southwest, where he was hired by the U.S. Cavalry as a civilian scout, packer, and interpreter under Al Sieber during the Apache Wars. Horn was respected for his work with the Army and soon rose through the ranks. In one instance, as the Army was crossing Cybeque Creek in Arizona, they were ambushed by Apache warriors positioned on high ground. Sieber ordered Horn and another scout, Mickey Free, to break away and return fire from a hill. Together with the soldiers, the men managed to repel the attack. Horn and Sieber also participated in the Battle of Big Dry Wash and gained recognition when he and Lt. George H. Morgan slipped through the banks opposite the Apache line and provided covering fire for the cavalry, killing a number of Apache warriors. Horn was a respected scout by then, known for going out alone in reconnaissance missions and helping track down Geronimo's major stronghold. By November 1885, Tom Horn earned the position of Chief of Scouts under Captain Emmett Crawford in Fort Bowie. September 4, 1886, Horn was present at Geronimo's final surrender and acted as an interpreter under Charles B. Gatewood. Horn allegedly killed his first man in a duel, a second lieutenant in the Mexican Army, a result of a dispute over a prostitute. After the war, Horn used what he earned to build his own ranch on his return to Aravepa Canyon in Arizona. His ranch consisted of 100 cattle and 26 horses, and he also laid claim in the Deer Creek mining district near the canyon. Unfortunately, it was short-lived, as cattle thieves stormed his ranch one night and stole all his stock, resulting in a tremendous loss and bankruptcy for Horn. This incident marked the start of Horn's hatred and disdain for thieves, which led to his entering the profession of range detective. Horn wandered and took jobs as a prospector, ranch hand, and rodeo contestant. But he is most notorious for being hired by numerous cattle companies as a cowboy and hired gun to watch over their cattle and kill any suspected rustlers. Horn took part in several local wars over disputes between ranchers and rustlers. As a deputy sheriff in Arizona, Horn participated in the lynching of 3 suspected rustlers in August 1888. In 1889, Horn was hired by Pinkerton National Detective Agency to handle investigations in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, Wyoming, and other western states. During the Johnson County War, Horn worked for the Wyoming Stock Growers Association and for the Pinkertons, who had assigned him to work undercover in the county using the alias Tom Hale. He is alleged to have been involved in the killing of Nate Champion and Nick Ray on April 9, 1892, and was a prime suspect in the killings of ranchers John A. Tisdale and Orley Ranger Jones. In 1895, Horn reportedly killed a known cattle thief named William Lewis near Iron Mountain, Wyoming. Horn was exonerated for that crime and for the 1895 murder of Fred Powell 6 weeks later. Tom Horn Jr. was believed to have committed 17 killings as a hired gunman throughout the West. Horn was convicted in 1902 of the murder of a 14-year-old near Iron Mountain, Wyoming. Horn was executed by hanging on November 20, 1903, and buried in Columbia Cemetery in Boulder, Colorado, on December 3, 1903. Ben Thompson, November 2, 1843, March 11, 1884, was a gunman, gambler, and sometimes lawman of the Old West. He was known to associate with the likes of Buffalo Bill Cody, Bat Masterson, John Wesley Hardin, and Wild Bill Hickok, some of whom considered him a friend, others an enemy. Thompson was born in Nottingley, West Yorkshire, England, to William and Mary Ann (nee Baker) Thompson in November 1843. Thompson worked for the Austin Rambler as a newsprinter's assistant while in his teens. Once he discovered gambling, however, Thompson began traveling and earning a living as a professional gambler. On June 12, 1861, Thompson enlisted in the Confederate States Army at San Antonio and became a private in the 2nd Regiment Texas Mounted Rifles Company. On January 1 to 2, 1863, Thompson participated in the Battle of Galveston, where the USS Harriet Lane was captured. Thompson was wounded during the battle and was treated for 6 weeks in a military hospital at Niblet's Bluff, located west of Vinton, Louisiana. Later that same year, Thompson took part in the Battle of Lafourche Crossing, June 20, 1863, near Thibodaux, Louisiana. The 2 Thompson brothers found themselves at night separated from the living and standing among the dead. After this battle, Thompson returned home to Austin. He re-enlisted in Company F in September 1863 and served out the remainder of the war stationed along the banks of the Rio Grande. After the conclusion of the Civil War, Thompson fought in the armed forces of Emperor Maximilian against the Mexican revolutionaries. In 1868, Thompson received word that his wife was being physically abused by her brother Jim Moore. Soon after his return to Texas, he confronted Moore and severely injured him. Charged with attempted murder, the 25-year-old Thompson was convicted and sentenced to 2 years in prison. He served time at Huntsville Prison, but eventually received a full pardon. In 1870, Thompson left Texas for Abilene, Kansas, which had become a boomtown due to the expanding cattle trade. In 1871, Thompson opened the Bull's Head Saloon in Abilene with friend and partner Phil Coe. Their saloon prospered due to the many cattle drives that gave Abilene a steady stream of cowboys passing through who were anxious to drink and gamble. It was at the Bull's Head Saloon that Thompson and Co. made the acquaintance of John Wesley Hardin and actively recruited him to rid the town of its marshal, Wild Bill Hickok. The two entrepreneurs had painted a picture of a bull with a large erect penis on the side of their establishment as a form of advertisement. Citizens of the town had complained to Hickok. When Thompson and Co. refused his request to remove the bull, Hickok had altered it himself. Infuriated, Thompson tried to incite Hardin by exclaiming to him, "He's a damn Yankee. Picks on rebels, especially Texans, to kill." Hardin, then living under the assumed name of Wesley Clemens, but better known to the townspeople by the alias Little Arkansas, replied, "If Wild Bill needs killin', why don't you kill him yourself?" Later that night, Hardin was confronted by Hickok, who told him to hand over his guns, which he did. Hickok had no knowledge at the time of Hardin being a wanted man, and he advised Clemens to avoid problems while remaining in Abilene. Soon afterward, Thompson was injured in a fall from a horse. While he was recuperating, Co. was involved in a fatal shootout with Hickok. Thompson never confronted Hickok over the shooting of Co., and both men left Abilene soon afterward. Thompson moved to Ellsworth, Kansas, which was also prospering as a cattle boomtown. On August 15, 1873, Thompson's younger brother Billy shot and killed Sheriff Chauncey Whitney. Whitney was standing near the two Thompson brothers who were facing off against a local police officer, John Happy Jack Morco, and a gambler, John Sterling. The confrontation had developed over a gambling dispute. Whitney was a friend to both brothers, and numerous witnesses confirmed that Whitney stated before he died that the shooting was accidental. Wyatt Earp claimed in an interview with his future biographer Stuart Lake that he had arrested Thompson after the altercation, although contemporary news accounts and Thompson's own biography describing the episode does not mention Earp's presence at all. Morco filed charges of assault against Ben Thompson the following day, due to Thompson's having fired in his direction prior to Whitney being shot. Officer Ed Hogue arrested Ben Thompson. That same week, police officer Ed Crawford killed Thompson's friend Cad Pierce in an incident that Crawford reportedly provoked. Morco and Hogue soon ran another Thompson friend, Neil Kane, out of town. The town council dismissed Morco, Hogue, and Crawford for inappropriate behavior. Soon after, newly appointed police officer J.C. Charlie Brown killed Morco when he pulled a gun during a disturbance. Friends of Cad Pierce soon killed Crawford. Ed Hogue left town. Billy Thompson fled Kansas too, but eventually was returned to be unsuccessfully tried for the death of Sheriff Whitney. In 1875, Ben Thompson returned to Texas, staying at Fort Elliott in the Panhandle. There he met and befriended Bat Masterson. When Masterson shot and killed a cavalry corporal, Melvin King, in a dispute over a woman, Thompson stepped in to prevent other soldiers from attacking Masterson. After that incident, the Santa Fe Railroad hired both gunmen to intercede in a right-of-way dispute between that railroad and the Rio Grande Railroad. After the railway dispute ended, Thompson returned to Austin, where he opened the Iron Front Saloon. One of his competitors was the Capitol Theater, owned and operated by Mark Wilson. On Christmas Eve 1876, Thompson and friends were at the Capitol Theater drinking when a fight erupted involving other patrons. When Thompson tried to intervene, Wilson produced a shotgun and fired at Thompson but missed. Thompson then killed Wilson. A bartender, Charlie Matthews, fired a Winchester rifle and grazed Thompson's hip. Thompson returned fire, hitting Matthews. Though seriously wounded, Matthews survived. Thompson was not arrested as the shooting was ruled self-defense. In June 1880, Ben Thompson asked Masterson to go to Ogallala, Nebraska, then the end of the Texas Trail, to rescue his younger brother Billy, who was in trouble again because of being involved in a shootout. Masterson, Ben, and Billy Thompson escaped from Ogallala and headed to Dodge City. In 1881, Thompson was hired by the city of Austin to serve as a city marshal. The following year, Thompson was involved in a dispute with vaudeville variety theater owner Jack Harris in San Antonio. Jack Harris was Thompson's 21st victim. Thompson shot and killed Harris. Thompson was indicted for murder and resigned his position as marshal. He was tried and acquitted, after which he returned to Austin. He was welcomed by the citizens, but he did not return to his law enforcement job. While on business in San Antonio on March 11, 1884, Thompson ran into rancher King Fisher. The two men, who had known one another for several years, decided to attend shows at the Turner Hall Opera House and later at the Vaudeville Variety Theater. A local lawman, Jacob Coy, sat with them. Thompson wanted to see Joe Foster, a theater owner who had been a friend of Harris's. Thompson had already spoken to Billy Sims, another theater owner, and Foster's new partner. Fisher and Thompson were directed upstairs to meet with Foster. Coy and Sims also joined them in the theater box. Foster refused to speak with Thompson. Fisher allegedly noticed that something was amiss when suddenly Sims and Coy stepped aside. As they did, a hail of bullets from an adjoining box hit Thompson and Fisher. Thompson fell, and either Coy or Foster ran up to him and shot him in the head with a pistol. Thompson died almost immediately. Fisher was shot 13 times, but fired one round in retaliation, possibly wounding Coy, who was crippled for life. While trying to draw his pistol, Foster had shot himself in the leg, which was later amputated. He died soon after the surgery. Thompson's body was returned to Austin. He is buried in Oakwood Cemetery in Austin. Jim Deacon Jim Miller James Brown Miller. October 25, 1861, April 19, 1909, also known as Killin' Jim, Killer Miller, and Deacon Jim, was an American outlaw and title holder gunfighter of the American Old West, said to have killed 12 people during gunfights. Miller was referred to by some by the alias Deacon Jim because he regularly attended the Methodist Church and he did not smoke or drink. Miller was born in Van Buren, Arkansas, but his parents migrated to Franklin, Texas when he was 1 year old, and he grew up there. His father, Jacob Miller, born in Pennsylvania in 1801, was a stonemason and helped build the first Capitol building in Austin, Texas. Miller's mother was born Cynthia Basham. Just a few years after the move, Miller's father died, so his mother took the family to Evant, Texas to live with her parents. In 1869, when Miller was 8, his grandparents were found murdered in their home. Miller was arrested but never prosecuted for the crime. On July 30, 1884, Miller shot and killed his brother-in-law, with whom he had had an argument, with a shotgun while the latter was sleeping on his porch. Miller was arrested for murder, convicted and sentenced to life in prison. The conviction, however, was overturned on a technicality. Miller became a hired hand on the McCulloch County ranch of Emmanuel Mannon Clements, cousin of outlaw John Wesley Hardin. Clements was killed by Ballinger City Marshal Joe Townsend on March 29, 1887, during the period when Miller worked at the ranch. Townsend was later ambushed by an assailant wielding a shotgun, which became known as Miller's signature style, and severely wounded in one arm. Townsend survived but lost his arm to amputation. Over the next couple of years, Miller traveled the Texas-Mexico border region and operated a saloon in San Saba County. In Reeves County, Miller became a deputy sheriff and later town marshal in Pecos. During this time, he gained a reputation for killing Mexicans, claiming that they had been attempting to escape. Miller became involved in a feud with Pecos Sheriff George A. Bud Fraser. While Fraser was on a trip to El Paso, he was informed that Miller had allowed criminals to gain greater control over Pecos. Fraser enlisted the help of Texas Ranger John R. Hughes to secure Pecos. After returning to Pecos, Fraser immediately jailed Miller on a charge of murder. A jury acquitted him of this charge. Fraser believed that Miller had stolen mules and had him arrested for theft. On April 12, 1894, in Pecos, Miller was confronted by Fraser about his involvement in the murder of Cattleman Con Gibson. Fraser did not wait for Miller to go for his shotgun and shot and wounded him in the right arm. While Miller was attempting to fire, he discharged his gun with his left hand, hitting bystander Joe Kranz. Fraser fired again, hitting Miller in the groin, which finally put him down. Fraser emptied his six-shooter into Miller's chest. After Miller's friends had rushed him to a doctor, his frock coat was removed to reveal a large steel plate that Miller wore under it as a kind of bulletproof vest. It saved his life, and Miller recovered. On December 26, 1894, Miller was standing outside of a blacksmith shop when Fraser began to fire at him. Fraser hit Miller in the arm and leg. Rushing in to finish him off, Fraser tried to shoot Miller in the chest, but the metal plate in Miller's coat saved him again. Fraser, demoralized, quickly retreated. Miller had Fraser charged with attempted murder. The case was heard in El Paso and ended in a hung jury. Fraser lost his bid for re-election as sheriff and left town for Eddy, New Mexico. A few months later, he returned to the Pecos area to visit his mother and sister. Miller learned Fraser was in the area. On September 13, 1896, Fraser was at a gambling table in Toyah, Texas. Miller opened the saloon's swinging doors, leveling his shotgun and shot Fraser, who was dealing, and removed most of his head. Fraser's sister later confronted Miller, who threatened to kill her as well. A jury acquitted Miller. Despite his legal issues, Miller got a job as a Texas Ranger and began to advertise his availability as a killer for hire. Charging $150 per murder, he used his Ranger authority to get away with literal murder. As his reputation grew, so did his fees, until he was eventually charging thousands of dollars per killing. He had no scruples about killing lawmen, including Pat Garrett, who had killed Billy the Kid. In 1909, Miller was hired to kill a popular rancher from Ada, Oklahoma, named Alan Bobbitt. Miller shot Bobbitt, but he lived long enough to name his killer. Miller and 3 accomplices were arrested, but the evidence seemed weak, leading many Ada residents and friends of Bobbitt to fear that his killers might get acquitted. The citizens of Ada formed a mob, broke into the jail where the accused were held, and lynched Miller and his accomplices in the early morning hours of April 19, 1909. They dragged the 4 suspects outside to an abandoned livery stable behind the jail. Miller made 2 final requests: that his diamond ring be given to his wife, and that he be permitted to wear his black hat while being hanged. Both requests were granted. He also asked to die in his black frock coat. This request was denied. Miller is reported to have shouted, "Let her rip," and stepped voluntarily off his box to hang. The bodies of all 4 men were left hanging for several hours, until a photographer could be brought in to record the moment. Jim Miller was said to have killed 12 people before he was lynched. John Wesley Hardin. John Wesley Hardin, May 26, 1853, August 19, 1895, was an American Old West outlaw, gunfighter, and controversial folk icon. Hardin was born in 1853 near Bonham, Texas, to James Gibson Gipp Hardin, a Methodist preacher and circuit rider, and Mary Elizabeth Dixon. He was named after John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist denomination of the Christian Church. The Hardins were related to several politicians and Revolutionary War Commander John Hardin, and opposing Civil War generals Martin Hardin and Benjamin Hardin Helm. At the outbreak of the Civil War, Hardin's father was elected a Confederate captain. In 1862, at age 9, Hardin tried to run away from home and join the Confederate Army. In 1867, while attending his father's school, Hardin was taunted by another student, Charles Sloter. Sloter accused Hardin of writing on the schoolhouse wall that insulted a girl in his class. Hardin denied writing the writing, claiming in turn that Sloter was the author. Sloter charged at Hardin with a knife, but Hardin stabbed him with his own knife, almost killing him. Hardin was almost expelled over the incident. In November 1868, when he was 15, Hardin challenged his uncle Holzhausen's former slave, Major Mage Holzhausen, to a wrestling match, which Hardin won. According to Hardin, the following day, Mage ambushed him as he rode past, shouting at him and waving a stick. Hardin drew his revolver and shot Mage 5 times. Hardin rode to get help, but his uncle died 3 days later. His father did not believe he would receive a fair hearing in the Union-occupied state, where more than a third of the state police were former slaves, so he ordered him into hiding. Hardin claimed that weeks later the authorities eventually discovered his location, and 3 Union soldiers were sent to arrest him, at which time he chose to confront his pursuers, despite having been warned of their approach by an older brother, Joseph. At a creek crossing, Hardin claimed to have killed 2 white men with a shotgun and killed a black man with a pistol. On January 5, 1870, Hardin was playing cards with Benjamin Bradley in Tawash, Hill County, Texas. Hardin was winning almost every hand, which Bradley threatened to cut out Hardin's liver if he won again. Bradley drew a knife and a 6-shooter. Hardin said he was unarmed and excused himself, but claimed that later that night, Bradley came looking for him. Bradley allegedly fired a shot at Hardin and missed. Hardin drew both his pistols and returned fire, one shot striking Bradley in the head and the other in his chest. January 20th, in Horn Hill, Limestone County, Texas, Hardin claimed he killed a man in a gunfight after an argument at the circus. Less than a week after this incident, in nearby Kosay, Texas, Hardin was with a prostitute when they were accosted by her pimp, who demanded money. Hardin threw money on the ground and shot the would-be thief when he bent over to pick it up. In January 1871, Hardin was arrested for the murder of Waco, Texas, City Marshal Laban John Hoffman. However, he denied committing this crime. Following his arrest, he was held temporarily in a log jail in the town of Marshall, awaiting transfer to Waco for trial. While locked up, he bought a revolver from another prisoner. 2 state policemen were assigned to transport Hardin to Waco. While one of them was feeding horses, Hardin pulled the revolver and shot and killed the other and escaped on a horse. While on the run, he was arrested by 3 men and killed them in Bell County. After the Bell County shootings, Hardin found refuge with his cousins, the Clements, who were then living in Gonzales in South Texas. They suggested he could make money by driving cattle to Kansas as a cowboy. Thinking he could get out of Texas long enough for his pursuers to lose interest, Hardin worked with his cousins, rustling cattle for Jake Johnson and Columbus Carroll. Hardin writes that he was made trail boss for the herd. In February 1871, while the herd was being collected for the drive to Kansas, a freedman, Bob King, attempted to cut a beef cow out of the herd. When he refused to obey Hardin's demand to stop, Hardin hit him over the head with his pistol. That same month, Hardin may have wounded 3 Mexicans in an argument over a 3-card Monte card game, pistol whipping one man over the head, shooting one man in the arm, and shooting the 3rd man in the lung. While on the Chisholm Trail, Hardin claims to have killed up to 6 men, to include 2 Indians. Once in Abilene, Kansas, Hardin had an encounter with City Marshal Wild Bill Hickok. Hickok was unaware that Hardin was a wanted man since Hardin was going by a different name. Hardin respected Hickok, and when asked to surrender his guns he was wearing in violation of the city code, Hardin surrendered them. Hardin met up again with Hickok in August 1871. This time, Hickok allowed Hardin to carry his pistols into town, something he had never allowed others to do. Hardin was fascinated with Hickok and enjoyed being in the presence of a celebrated gunfighter. August 6, 1871. Hardin, his cousin Gip Clements, and a rancher friend named Charles Cougar put up for the night at the American House Hotel after an evening of gambling. Clements and Hardin shared one room, with Cougar in the adjacent room. All 3 had been drinking heavily. Sometime during the evening, Hardin was awakened by loud snoring coming from Cougar's room. He first shouted several times for the man to roll over, and then, irritated by the lack of response, drunkenly fired several bullets through the shared wall in an apparent effort to awaken him. Cougar was hit in the heart by one of the bullets as he lay in bed and was killed instantly. The incident earned Hardin a reputation as a man so mean he once shot a man for snoring. On October 6, 1871, Hardin was involved in a gunfight with 2 Texas special policemen, 2 freedmen, Privates Green Paramore and John Lackey, during which Paramore was killed and Lackey wounded. After October 1871, a black posse from Austin, Texas came after him for killing Paramore, but said that they returned sadder and wiser after he ambushed and killed 3 of them. In May 1872, about 45 miles outside Corpus Christi, Texas, after he was followed by 2 Mexicans, he shot one off his horse while the other quit the fight. On June 19, 1872, Hardin was involved in a gunfight in Willis, Texas. On July 26, 1872, Hardin wounded Texas State Policeman Sonny Spites in the arm with a Derringer pistol in Hemphill, Texas. On August 7, 1872, Hardin was wounded by a shotgun blast in a gambling dispute at the Gates Saloon in Trinity, Texas. He was shot by Phil Sublette, who had lost money to him in a poker game. 2 buckshot pellets penetrated Hardin's kidney, and for a time it looked as if he would die. While recuperating from his wounds, Hardin decided he wanted to settle down. After surrendering to Sheriff Reagan of Cherokee County, Texas, he was wounded in the right knee by an accidental gunshot from a nervous deputy. Hardin made a sickbed surrender to authorities, handing over his guns to Sheriff Reagan and asking to be tried for his past crimes in order to clear the slate. However, when Hardin learned of how many murders Reagan was going to charge him with, he changed his mind. Hardin escaped custody after a relative was able to get a hacksaw to him, and he cut the bars of his cell. In November 1872, Hardin escaped from the Gonzales County, Texas, jail despite a guard of 6 men. A $100 reward was offered for his arrest. On July 18, 1873, in Cuero, Texas, Hardin killed DeWitt County Deputy Sheriff J.B. Morgan, who served under County Sheriff Jack Helm, a former captain in the Texas State Police and leader of the Sutton Force at that time. Later that day, Hardin killed Helm in the town square of Albuquerque, Texas, May 26, 1874, in a Comanche, Texas saloon to celebrate his 21st birthday. Hardin shot and killed Brown County Deputy Sheriff Charles Webb. On January 20, 1875, the Texas legislature authorized Governor Richard B. Hubbard to offer a $4,000 reward for Hardin's arrest. An undercover Texas Ranger named Jack Duncan intercepted a letter sent to Hardin's father-in-law by Hardin's brother-in-law, Joshua Robert Brown Bowen. The letter mentioned that Hardin was hiding out at a lumber yard on the Alabama-Florida border using the name John or James W. Swain. On August 24, 1877, Rangers and local authorities confronted Hardin on a train in Pensacola, Florida. He attempted to draw a .44 Colt cap-and-ball pistol, but it got caught up in his suspenders. The officers knocked Hardin unconscious. Hardin was tried for Webb's killing, and on June 5, 1878, was sentenced to serve 25 years in Huntsville Prison. In 1879, Hardin and 50 other convicts were stopped within hours of successfully tunneling into the prison armory. Hardin made several attempts to escape. On February 14, 1892, during his prison term, he was convicted of another manslaughter charge for the earlier shooting of J.B. Morgan and given a 2-year sentence to be served concurrently with his unexpired 25-year sentence. February 17, 1894, Hardin was released from prison after serving 17 years of his 25-year sentence. He was 40 years old when he returned to Gonzales, Texas. Later that year, on March 16th, Hardin was pardoned, and on July 21st, he passed the state's bar exam, obtaining his license to practice law. An El Paso lawman, John Selman Jr., arrested Hardin's acquaintance and part-time prostitute, the widow Moroz, or Miraz, for brandishing a gun in public. Hardin confronted Selman and the 2 men argued. Some accounts state that Hardin pistol-whipped the younger man. Selman's 56-year-old father, Constable John Selman Sr., approached Hardin on the afternoon of August 19, 1895, and the 2 men exchanged heated words. That night, Hardin went to the Acme Saloon where he began playing dice. His last words were, 4 sixes to beat. Shortly before midnight, Selman Sr. entered the saloon, walked up to Hardin from behind and shot him in the head, killing him instantly. As Hardin lay on the floor, Selman fired 3 more shots into him. Hardin claims to have killed 42 people, but by most accounts the number was more around 27. Tell us in the comments who you think was the deadliest gunslinger. We ask you to like and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a video. Thanks for watching.